if you're in traffic and you notice that you're behind a small pickup truck that you know deep in your heart only has a V4 engine, call your friends, call whomever it is that you're going to meet, and tell them you're going to be late. Mac Engel, Fort Worth Star Telegram, Engel podcast here on the Sunset Lounge. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, I do have a really wonderful guest for this episode. Before I get to that, I have to do some homework. I don't know, it's not homework. I've checked some things off, some boxes. I have to tell you about some things. Okay. I've said this before on the show, I think. All shows here on the Sunset Lounge, they are free. Free. Every show, free. That includes Shipping Grooves. Very exciting time for Mr. Jonathan Shipman. He is the DJ spinning all of that house music that is bumping, as the kids would say, at the Dallas Stars home games at the American Airlines Center in downtown Dallas. And the Dallas Stars, for the third straight year, are in the NHL's Stanley Cup Playoff Western Conference Finals. It's actually a very big deal. So if you go to the game and you hear some just kick and beat and you just can't help but get up but dance to it, shout out to Mr. Jonathan Shipman. He's the reason why. So make sure to join him for their show on the Sunset Lounge. That's Shipping Grooves. Also free, the Clubhouse, Rob, Alex, and Don. Summer movie season is here, and they are all about it, as well as sports and wrestling. The Engel, that's me. Thank you very much. Hold your applause. That's free. Beer 30 Sports O'Clock, just to make sure everybody knows. Ziggy has plenty to talk about, even though football season right now is not going on, even though you can make an argument football season in this country is always going on. Al Maximo, football, soccer, and Formula One. I am dying to know, even this show is in Spanish and I don't speak any Spanish, or un poquito. No, shoot, poquito. I don't even know if that's the right word. I was going to say small. Despacio, por favor. I know that one. Donde el baño? The new movie coming out about Formula One starring Brad Pitt, the title F1, I am really itching to know what F fans think about that movie. It doesn't come out until the end of June, but they spent like $300 million making it, and I'm really jazzed about seeing what the action race sequences look like in that movie, and if it does for F1, what Days of Thunder starring Tom Cruise did for NASCAR back in the early 90s. That is El Maximo. There's a subject for you, fellas. F1, the movie. Get you some free passes. Football, soccer, F1, Spanish-speaking show featuring Victor Viaba. The two L's are together. Viaba and Carlos Nava. He of ESPN Deportes. And well, good, because here on his bio, it says reporter of NFL, MLB, NBA, boxing, and soccer. Should be football. Sunset Lounge is free. Click the free member button. It's the free member button at the top of the membership page to get all of those shows, as well as Mr. Mike Reiner and Your Dark Companion. Brrr. That's patreon.com/SunsetLoungeDFW. Patreon.com/SunsetLoungeDFW. One more thing. Sunset Lounge is a fan of, partner of, should be players for the Frisco Rough Riders. A reminder that Thirsty Thursdays are throughout the entire season at Frisco Rough Rider games. Join us, that is the good-looking people of the Sunset Lounge, in the Bull Moose Saloon. That's in left field, not right field. Left field. Who knows? In the Bull Moose Saloon, you might see Teddy Roosevelt, although I've heard he's dead. You can also maybe potentially spot any one of us in the Lazy River, which is in the outfield. I might go for a swim. I'm taking swim lessons now. That's true. I am taking swim lessons. Maybe you see us in the stands, maybe in the crowd. That's Thirsty Thursdays, all Thursdays throughout the Frisco Rough Riders season. And if you're so inclined, there's a rumor out there that I'm going to be there on June 7th. That's a Saturday. It is true. It's Saturday, June 7th. Frisco Rough Riders game. That's not a Thursday. That's a different thing. I said I'd go. So I'm very excited about that. Hopefully I'll get in a couple of at-bats. I did mention I am taking swim lessons. That is a true story. Because I suck at swimming. My strength as a swimmer is that I don't drown. Now, that's a big deal. I want to acknowledge how important that is right off the top. That as a swimmer, do you not drown? And I don't drown. And for that, you'd be like, dude, gold medal, outstanding job. No, but I got frustrated with it. I've gone swimming, I do these laps, and I'll be next to this person who's like 110 years old, and he weighs like 500 pounds. And I'm estimating the numbers. But I'm not kidding. It's really frustrating for me, a guy likes to work out a lot and exercise and all that good stuff, and I can go one lap, not up and back. I'm talking wall to wall. I can swim a lap, and then I have to take a breather, readjust my goggles, maybe my hair, cough, and I've got to catch my breath, and then I can do it again. So finally, I had it. I'm so sick of being blown away by these rapidly aging senior citizens. And I'm telling you, they're crushing me. And I'm like, I want to be able to do this as an exercise so I can swim laps and go back and forth and back and forth. And I can't do it. So finally, I gave in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a lesson. The gym, I signed up for a lesson. Meet my instructor. Her name is Miriam. I meet her. She appears to be about 15 years old. I'm 6 feet tall. She might be 4'8". She's wearing eyeglasses and a swim cap. That's my instructor. And I'm a little embarrassed about all this. And she said, okay, what's your goal? And I said, well, I want Olympic gold. I don't think she quite got that joke. She kind of stumbled on that one for a second, but it's all good. And I was really self-conscious about it. And I really want to learn how to swim better so I can do this. And we went over some goals and stuff. And I said, do adults do this? And she said, oh, yeah, all the time. Most of my students are adults. So immediately I felt better of what Miriam thought of my endeavor to not drown a little bit more effectively. My guest for this episode, before I introduce him formally, a little interesting factoid. How have I already talked for like 7 minutes? One of the cool things about my job is that when I was young, and I hope he doesn't see this part, but when I was young, I would see people on television or read their work or listen to them on the radio or whatever, and I would admire them and think, wow, they're really good. I want to do that. One thing about me, most people don't know because they don't care, is that my original career ambition was to be a sports broadcaster, either play-by-play or something like that. And things got sidetracked for one reason or another. Nobody cares. And I thought, okay, that's fine. But there are a number of people that I've had the opportunity to meet over the last however many years who have become, I don't want to say friends. That's too liberal use of the word. But acquaintances, people who might recognize me and I recognize them, and we exchange pleasantries, and just two people working a job, more or less. Well, there's one guy that I had seen when I was young, and I watched the NBA on TNT, and he was one of their primary voices, and he was really good. So a handful of years ago, I'm at Big 12 Media Days, where it's basically chances for the media to interview players and coaches, maybe athletic directors, broadcast media, everybody's there, and it's one common spot where you can talk about, in this particular case, Big 12 football. And they do have a press conference. In this particular case, the moderator was former TNT play-by-play voice Ron Thulin. I'd watched Ron for a long time when I watched the NBA games on TNT. He's a tremendous broadcaster, really good broadcaster. I'd seen him call college football games, God knows what else. the Olympics, everything. Ron did it. So before there's a break, and Ron walks up to me, and he says, Mac Engel. And I said, yes. He said, I'm Ron Thulin. I said, I know who you are. And he could not have been any more gracious and any kinder and any nicer in giving me a bunch of compliments that I probably didn't deserve. But it meant a lot to me because I watched Ron when I was younger, and for him to come up to do that was very nice. And I've gotten to know him a little bit since then. Our paths have crossed a few times. We know a few people in common. We visited about a number of subjects. And I thought, he would be a really good person to have on this podcast because Ron was there at the beginning when TNT was still in its relative infancy as a sports programming platform. TNT was a part of the Turner Broadcasting System family, the Ted Turner giant corporation that really changed the world through cable television, through specifically cable news, and eventually sports. Well, Ron was a part of the TNT NBA coverage when it started out. And unfortunately, or however you want to look at this, the NBA's relationship with TNT is ending this season, here in the next couple of weeks. The NBA has been on TNT since 1989, and it will conclude when the Eastern Conference Finals between the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks ends. Now, obviously, the thing that got so much attention about this is that when the NBA was negotiating its new television broadcast partnership deal, instead of remaining with TNT, it went to NBC. And the concern was, well, gosh, what's going to happen to Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, Shaquille O'Neal, and Ernie Johnson, and that famous Inside the NBA, which has revolutionized television sports broadcasting? What's going to happen to them? Well, they're going to ESPN, which is also part of the NBA's new TV rights package. And just to give you an idea, if you ever hear somebody say, nobody watches the NBA, it's dying, know this, that when the NBA negotiated its new TV rights broadcast package, it's for 11 years, and it will pay the league $2.45 billion a year. Jerry Jones once said this about TV rights broadcasting fees as it relates to ratings. As ratings go down, sports rights fees go up, and that certainly has proven to be the case here. The NBA is fine. It's a global property. People gamble on it like junkies, and it is doing fine. Do not believe anybody who tells you otherwise. Mr. Ron Thulin is joining me for the podcast, for the podcast, to talk about his career, not only with TNT and the NBA, but certainly at the beginning when he started in 1976 in Oklahoma City, and he was one of the original hosts of the Barry Switzer show. He eventually moved to Dallas, and he worked for 4 decades in sports broadcasting, including college football, the Olympics, and now he currently calls WNBA games for the Dallas Wings. Please welcome my friend, Mr. Ron Thulin. All right, Mr. Thulin, are you ready for this?
Hey, I'm with a pro, okay? I'm with a
slow
pro
down.
that asks good questions.
Yes,
and it's a friend of mine, so yeah, I think I'm ready.
Slow down with the compliments.
So,
I have looked you up extensively on the Google machine, and I came across a bio that said Ron Thulin is a man of honor, integrity, and trust. Is that true?
Well, since I wrote it, yeah,
it is. do you know what I'm referring to? Do you know where I found that?
No, I don't. I've never seen that.
Okay, this is on a web page that I found. It was the e-speakers page, something.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And apparently this is about 10 or 15 years old, and this is when you made your services available for speaking luncheons, engagements, banquets, or to MC things. And you charged $2,000 an appearance, but you would travel. What's your going rate now? Are you still at $2,000? Are you up or down from that number?
Do you know what? I never charge anybody.
Why not? You make the rest of us look bad. I got a gift card to like Bennigan's not too long ago.
a lot of them give me honorariums, which is nice, or my favorite is when they give you like a gift certificate to Ruth's Chris or, something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of odd because of my faith. It's like I have a job. I don't need a job. And I'm trying to be a good servant. And how can I be a good servant? Well, if they want to do something, fine. But I never go, you got to pay me this. I'll tell you another person that does is Ernie Johnson. EJ and I have been friends. We got hired together at Turner back in, I guess it was late 88, early 89.
It says here on my sheet, 1989.
Yeah. I signed the contract in 88, but I started in 89. But I just always felt that, I'm lucky to do that. Yeah. And if somebody wants me to share my story or my thoughts, I'm just blessed to do it. And, I think my family, my lovely wife probably are going, Dad, really? Come on, you have to get paid for this. But I never asked.
Well, I appreciate that because that means I'm going to put a stop on the check that I had mailed you. So, Ron, the reason I wanted to do this now, the timing of this works, and you know how timing is everything in this business. Right. As you know, the NBA's relationship with TNT is going to end after the upcoming Eastern Conference Finals between the Pacers and Knicks ends. You were there pretty much from day one when TNT launched that relationship. Having seen this now play out for the last 12 to 18 months, however long, about the NBA's future with various broadcast partners and specifically TNT, considering you were such a big part of that broadcast launch and family for as long as you were, do you have any emotional response to the fact that this is going away?
Absolutely, I do. I'm crushed.
Are you really?
I mean, we used to do TBS Thursday night or Friday night, whatever it was. And I remember the late Don McGuire, who was our executive producer, who was probably the best executive producer I ever worked for in my entire life. And Ernie Johnson would say the exact same thing, I'm sure, and so would Hubie and a lot of us. He said, hey, we're starting this TNT. And I went, cool. And I mean, it was fun because we were doing games on both networks. And I watched us grow from everybody going, why are they going TNT? Why are they doing this? And Don put together an incredible group of announcers, including Doug Collins, Hubie Brown, Snapper Jones, Rick Barry was one of my first guys I worked with. And his feeling was, we're just going to do, TNT's going to be just basketball. We're going to do basketball. We're not going to get into politics, religion, anything. Let's just do the games and have a bunch of fun doing it. And I saw that the way it grew, and especially somebody like Ernie, who just continued to grow. If it wasn't for TNT, I don't know where my career would have been. I mean, Don hired me. He was the executive producer of Raycom when I was doing the Southwest Conference in the old Big 8. And when he got the Turner job, he took me with him. And I don't know where I'd be without Turner Broadcasting. I mean, best company I ever worked for. But yeah, I am emotional about it because I know the people still to this day that work there, and they are 100% invested in that product. They want the best possible product. They challenged us. Don challenged us. Everybody who worked there challenged us to be different, to be the best. And he always had a feeling that it wasn't about us, it was about the game. And, yes, there's going to be a certain notoriety with doing the games, but Don and everybody in there, we were all about the game. Our production meetings would be guys just bringing tons of stuff and sharing ideas and arguing over things. But it was all because we wanted a great product, and that was because of Turner. And to see that kind of, and the guys who run it now just totally screwed that up. I totally agree with Charles Barkley. They screwed this thing up. They totally messed it up, and it's sad. They should be doing the games. I am kind of glad NBC is doing the games again because I just want to hear John Tesh's song again.
So
who actually became a friend of mine through that, which is kind of.
You got to know John Tesh?
Yeah, he is. Well, here's the funny story about that. So, I got to meet him, but before he married Connie Selica,
right,
she used to sit behind us in Laker games, and I forgot who she was married to at the time. And so during the game, half timeouts, I'd turn around, I'd look, and Hubie looks at me, and he gets this eye that kind of starts twitching when he gets mad. This
Well,
eye.
timeout. I want to make sure everybody knows you're talking about former NBA coach and longtime great broadcaster Hubie Brown. Okay.
Yeah, Hubie Brown. His eyes just twitching, and he goes, Cuba, concentrate on the game. Quit looking at the woman. And so finally, at halftime, he goes up to her and he goes, "Hi, I'm Hubie. My broadcast partner can't quit watching you. Would you come say hi to him?" And so I told Tesh that story, and he just lost it. He goes, "That is the funniest thing." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I just couldn't get over how beautiful she was." But so John is actually a really, really incredibly nice person. And of course, you hear his song, you think basketball.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever hear the story about John Tesh that there was this small group of crazy people who thought John Tesh was an alien?
Oh, jeez.
Do you not know that?
No.
Oh, no. You need to go when we're done with this podcast. You need to look up John Tesh as an alien. He has a great sense of humor about it.
Oh.
But yeah, he's gone on talk shows and talked about it. People have come up and like, ooh, the sense for you is strong. So with the NBA, so go back to that time, because I when I was younger, a long time ago, and cable television was still a relative novelty when that started. Obviously, Ted Turner had changed the world with CNN out of Atlanta, something we had not seen before. ESPN by that time was doing pretty well, was growing. MTV had changed the entertainment industry. But the notion of what TNT and Turner Broadcasting and TBS was doing was still kind of relatively new. Did you have any reservations, Ron, about this venture and think, I don't know if this thing's going to work? Or did you think, I just need a job, go ahead, let's rock and roll?
I never had any reservations, because when you meet Ted Turner, and I'll be honest with you, strange guy, okay?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
How you doing, kid?
Did you know who you were?
No, not a clue.
Okay.
And they introduced me. They said, "Okay, Mr. Turner, this is Ron. He's going to be doing the Atlanta Hawks. Good to have you." He's standing there with Jane Fonda, and I'm just looking at Jane Fonda the whole time. I had no reservations, because their vision, Ted's vision, was not 1989. It was 2099. Mm-hmm. He was so far ahead on his thinking, and you spend 10 minutes with him and the people that were running Turner, and you go, I want to be part of this, because you knew they had direction, they knew what they wanted to do, and they wanted to take care of their people. They took care of all of our employees so well. I mean, if I had to be gone longer than 4 days, they would fly my wife to wherever I was going. I mean, she went to Germany with me. She went to Paris with me.
Wow.
They always flew her. They said, well, and the first thing they always say is, how's the family? How are the kids? And then they'd go, by the way, the third quarter you sucked, but
But how's your daughter?
But they really cared about you, and I wanted to be part of something like that. The people that around me, I truly loved, I cared about, and we were all rowing the same oar. I mean, we were all going after it together, and that was kind of fun.
So you, at the time, the novelty was two teams had exclusive national broadcasting rights
to
have their games carried all over the place. The Atlanta Braves and the Chicago Cubs, which to this day helped build that fan base nationwide, right?
Absolutely.
And even it still never ceases to amaze me the power of what KMOX, the radio station, had on the success of the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team for generations. The same can be said of the Cubs and WGN and TBS with the Atlanta Braves. So now you go into a similar role with the Atlanta Hawks. And at the time, I think when you were doing Hawks games, they were in the middle of a pretty good run with Dominique Wilkins at the Omni and Doc Rivers and Cliff Livingston and a whole bunch of character guys. What are your memories of working with those teams? Because go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I did the Hawks, and it was the last year of Mike Fratello, and I love Michael. He was fun to be around. Brian Hill was his assistant. As you mentioned, we had Neek, we had Doc, we had Cliff Livingston, John Battle.
That's right.
I mean, we had a bunch of characters on that team, but these guys were really fun to be around, and they took me in. And my broadcast partner was Kevin Lockery,
Oh
and
yeah.
I came from college, and he and Brian Hill and Mike, they'd take me up in their hotel room after a game, and they said, "Okay, you said this. You can say that in college, but you can't say that in the NBA. You know, it's this, this, that." They were teaching me, and it was
Give me an
great.
example. Like, what would you have said? That's fascinating. I've never heard that. What would you
20
have said,
seconds.
Ron, during an NBA broadcast that they would say, yeah, it's not going to fly in the NBA?
Timeouts. You know, I don't even. I think we had 30-second timeouts back then, but in college, I don't think they did at the time, and I didn't know that, and just the fouls and everything. You know how they were calling fouls, but Brian and Mike, and especially Brian, they would sit there and talk to me, and they'd go to the games, and it wasn't like, "Hey, we got you." It was like they wanted me to be the best announcer for the Atlanta Hawks. And I can't thank Mike and Brian and Kevin enough for that. But, you know, we were on TBS, and I mean, people watched the Hawks
Yep.
back then because of Neek.
Yeah. Right.
And Neek was just such a joy to be around. And I actually called his last season when he joined the Spurs in 96, 97. He wasn't in his playing weight back then in 96, 97. Neek didn't push away from the table his final year. But he was fun to be around, and he's always been very, very kind and generous to me. And but the TBS thing was, I didn't realize how big it was, you know, how big TBS was until I got there, and they took me to a baseball game, for instance, and I sat in with Skip Carey behind him and watched, and Pete Van Weeren.
Gosh, yeah.
And it was just like,
Was Don Sutton in that booth?
he wasn't in yet.
Okay.
But I actually worked with Don Sutton. He and I worked together in Havana, Cuba at the Pan Am Games.
Wow.
And when we got detained in Havana and they wouldn't let us leave the country together, that was pretty funny.
Oh, you got to tell me I mean, that was the challenge when I was writing all this down, Ron. And I know that before this starts, I'm like, he's going to go in 1,000 different directions, and I'm going to let it go. I saw that you worked the Pan Am Games, Winter Olympics in '92 and '94. You did the Barry Switzer show back in the '70s or '80s.
Yeah.
But getting detained in Cuba, that's pretty unique. You need to tell me what happened.
So we get done, and it's Sutton, myself, and our producer, and they said, "You guys can go ahead and leave." Well, we had a flight on like Brazilian Air from Havana to Miami. And Ted had worked a deal with President Bush that we could go down there because there was a ban on traveling down there. But he worked a deal with that and with, believe it or not, El Jefe, Fidel. So we go, okay, we're leaving. So we go to Havana Airport. They take our visas, our exit visas, and they say, "You guys got to go sit over here." Well, all of a sudden they go, "That flight's not leaving for 2 days." And we went, "Oh, crap. Okay, we're going to go back to our hotel in the compound." They said, "You can't leave. We took your visas." And they said, "You got to go stay in this room." We went, "What the heck?" So there was an American agent, FBI agent, who was making sure that things were going smoothly, that was watching us. And I said, "I got to get a hold of Turner." Long story short, I called Turner. They go, "We've talked to Ted's secretary. He's sending a plane for you guys." And so we sit in this room for like 6 hours while this plane's coming. And all we're drinking is Hatue beer, which is like 17% alcohol. and we've got this, and I'm not even a beer drinker. We have this stack of beer cans. And the Cuban guards didn't speak in English. They're getting all mad at us and everything. Plane comes. They go, "Okay, that's your plane." We said, "Okay." This Panamanian pilot comes walking out of the plane. And we go, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Just shut up and walk right to the plane." And we went, "Okay." So we get on the plane. We land in Miami. They take us to a private terminal. As we pull up, we see all these people hands up against the wall being frisked by customs. We're going, "Oh, crap." Now, I had 100 cigars with me for my, believe it or not, my doctor, and 2 bottles of real good Cuban rum for my doctor in Atlanta. And so we get off the plane. They go, "All right, guys, over here." So Sutton and I walk over, and we're still kind of going, "Ooh," And the guy goes, "Do you bring in any drugs?" And I said, "No, sir." I said, "Listen, I got to be honest, because I'm an honest guy." I said, "I've got cigars, I've got this rum," which was illegal to bring back.
Right.
He goes, "You got any drugs?" And I said, "No." He looks over, he goes, "Oh my God, you're Don Sutton." And he goes, yeah, how you doing? He goes, oh, Don, I grew up in L.A. I used to wear number 20. Oh, hey, you guys go ahead. You guys go ahead.
You're
Don't
fine.
worry about it.
You could have had drugs.
I know. And then something that just look at each other, if we just bust out laughing, you know, they let us go and didn't confiscate anything from us, which was pretty funny.
So when you were doing games and you're part of the NBA family and you're starting to see that league really take off and probably surpass Major League Baseball because of all the personalities and Michael Jordan and all that different stuff. Did you start to see the league change in ways that you thought, I don't know if I like this? Or were you always a fan?
That's a great question. I was so engulfed in it at my time in the NBA, going through Turner, the Hawks, and also the Spurs. I didn't see it really changing till I got out of it and joined Fox to do college football and college basketball in 96, 97. And all of a sudden I looked at the game and I went, that ain't the game I like. You know, I saw that it changing the style of play and everything. And once again, when your mentor is Hubie Brown and Doug Collins, you're a purist, you know. Now they adapted probably better than I did, but I just didn't like the isolations. It's either a dunk or a 3-point shot. I just didn't like that, and I didn't like the lack of flow in the game, and the fact we didn't have a Michael at the time, and we didn't have a Magic, and I was blessed enough to call both those guys' games, but then all of a sudden I went, I don't like this game, and I've had opportunities to go back to the NBA. And number one, I didn't want to move, but number two, I wasn't happy. You know, I didn't like the way the direction was going of the league. Nothing against the league, because like David Stern, I considered him a friend, treated me incredibly well. And even Adam Silver, he was just a gopher when I was doing the NBA, treated me incredibly well. But for some reason, I just didn't like it anymore. You know, I just didn't, I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but.
Well, I think there's a middle ground. I think sometimes we're guilty of idealizing nostalgia.
Oh gosh,
and,
yes.
And you know, if it was when the game that we liked in our formative years is the game that we want to remain,
right?
And the game changes. And sometimes I'll stumble into YouTube and I'll watch games from 1994 or whatever else, in any sport, and it doesn't look like it really doesn't look like it does today.
Exactly.
But I'll see, I'll look at it from a more critical eye, Ron, and I'll think, I'm not sure 88 to 84 is a good game.
Right.
But I say in the same vein, I don't think 135, 131 is a good game.
No.
There's this middle ground, and I'm certainly turned off by 35 to 43-point shots in a game. And I get analytics has done it, but I do think basketball is going to have to cannibalize the NBA is going to have to cannibalize itself a little bit and force some changes down the coaches and GMs and players' throats, the way Major League Baseball did, in terms of, we have to do this. Like,
right.
There's some changes here that I know you've done, all about statistical advantages, and we just have to get away from it because it's not a good product. I don't think the NBA is a bad product necessarily, but I do think I'm kind of with you. I'm like, there's got to be a middle ground to this because it was this way and now we're this way.
100%. I mean, was it too rough back then? Yeah, but I kind of like seeing Charles Oakley cold cock people. I mean, I got a kick out of that. You know, I mean, that was, you know, Oak was a good guy, and you know, but the physicality kind of took away sometimes. But I'm with you. I don't like 35, 43-point shots. I just don't like that. You know, and I think I'm probably a little. Of course, I'm old. I'll admit that, and I'm a little nostalgic about those times because you know, that's what I grew up on. Those are the great players that I knew. So
go back to your career calling NBA games. Give me a favorite game or two or a moment that this is very special to you that you called.
Number one was probably when Charlotte beat Boston for their first playoff series win.
Was that the game winner by Alonzo at the
You got it. You can Google it, and that's my voice on there.
Yes, I remember that. Impressed. They all mobbed him. He's there on the floor with his arms held out.
And it was Kevin McHale's last game. You know, he retired after that, and he came over to us after the game. We did an interview, but that was special to me. But wait, what made that even more special, and it's funny because we just had the anniversary, and a bunch of my friends just sent me this last week or so, the video of that, and I had forgotten about it. But what was special about that, I go in the locker room of Charlotte to wish Alan Bristow, who was the coach, good luck. Mac, I swear, he's sitting on the trainer's table like this. And I said, Alan, congratulations, man. I said, you okay? He goes, oh, crap. Now I got to get ready for the next series. Mac,
he couldn't enjoy it.
He didn't have time to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, God, we beat them. And I look at Bill, I forgot his last name, his assistant, played guard, white guy, Hassan, and others. But I look at him and he goes, the life of the NBA, okay, we had 30 seconds to enjoy it, celebration on the court, but we got to get back to this. And that hit me. What Hubie Brown told me in 1994, sitting on top of the Hotel Capri in Havana, Cuba, with Hubie, Jimmy Valvano, and myself. And wow. I know that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And Hubie goes, Ron, respect coaches. You don't know what they're going through. And I always had that in the back of my mind because, talking to somebody like Doug Collins, who when he coached, he always had a little pad and paper next to his nightstand by his bed. Because he'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, crap, I got to do this. Here's a great defense. And he never rested. And I asked him one time, I said, is it fun? He goes, no, it's not fun. and he kind of got pissed at me. And, talking to coaches, and I think it's harder now. In fact, I told the West Virginia women's coach last night, he was at the Wings game, I said, I couldn't do what you guys do. Because you're dealing with these personalities that now, because of Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, they're all becoming these mini celebrities, and they think they actually know everything.
Yep.
But I always have incredible respect, as you and I have talked in the past, for the majority of coaches.
Just slow down.
Yeah, 100%. Let's tap the brakes on that. There's a couple that I go, it won't show up on the air. I have never, ever, ever killed a coach on the air, nor will I ever. I just don't do that. It's about the game to me. It's about respecting the game. But, for the most part, I respect coaches a lot because I was just talking to one of the Atlanta Dream coaches just a few minutes ago about what they think Chris Cole-Clannis, the coach of the Wings, is going through after last night's game. There's that pit of your stomach for these coaches that, they can't let it go. I mean, they say they do, but I've never met a coach that's able to let it go with a loss.
Did you ever get to know Rudy Tomjanovich, the old Rockets coach, yes. At all? Okay, so you knew Rudy. I only interviewed him once, and I was just he was coaching the Lakers, and I was absolutely blown away how nice he was to me.
Totally.
And I'm like, you don't even know me. And he's sitting down with me. The Lakers had won. Remember that's when he was coaching that Lakers team that had been gutted. So it was just Kobe and a bunch of guys. And Rudy finds out that I'm from Fort Worth, and he says, hey, let's sit down and talk. And he's telling me this story. His first game coaching the Rockets, and they had lost.
Yeah. It's
an 82-game season, right?
Yeah.
And he says, I'm sitting up in my chair in the living room, and I'm so mad. And I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't even conceive.
I know.
It's 82 games, and you've lost one. You've been in the league as a player, so you know what that calendar looks like and the emotional stability required to even get through it. And he's sitting there saying, I'm so mad that he couldn't let go. He's like, I think he had a beer in his hand or something, he was telling me.
That's a shock.
And I think about, you talk about coaches sometimes, and I do understand there is a level of 24-hour-a-day stress that prevents them from probably even sleeping or resting semi-normally. And I can't imagine the damage it does to their health sometimes.
You know who the other one was Jerry Sloan.
Oh, God, I heard horror stories about how competitive he was.
Jerry and I got along incredibly well.
Yeah.
I just had so much respect for his staff at Utah. But Jerry wanted the players to treat the game like he did. And we all know what kind of player Jerry was.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll punch you in the mouth to win a game. And he just did, he hated all the hugging and all this kind of stuff before the game. He hated that. But Jerry, after a game, after a loss, you you go back in the coach's room, and he had to sneak beer in because Larry Miller, the owner of the Jazz, wouldn't let him bring beer in.
Larry was Mormon, right?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But he would have his equipment guy sneak this case of beer in. And his assistants are just chugging these things, and he took every loss like his mother had passed away.
Yeah.
I mean, it was because he had a level of expectation that he held himself to, and he expected the players to do that, and they didn't. Cuba used to say, "These guys don't care." He goes, "Ron, at midnight they're chasing women and ordering pizza. It's over for them." They go, "Okay, whatever." And
I mean, he's not wrong.
No, he's not wrong.
Which leads me to the story that you don't remember telling me. I guarantee you don't remember telling me this story, but I'm going to ask you anyways. So you're calling Atlanta Hawks games.
Yeah.
And I think, were you guys flying private or commercial at the time?
Commercial. We flew commercial.
God, that's crazy. I just can't imagine Cliff Livingston and all these Kevin Willis and Dominique Wilkins.
Kevin Willis was our neighbor.
Was he really?
And we had a flight from New York somewhere, and he had a sitting coach. And he was sitting next to me.
Kevin Willis is like 6'11".
I know. And Sasha Volkovich, who played back then, this Russian guy, they're on either side of me, and I'm in the middle. And Sasha had met all his little Russian friends after the game. We take off, and Sasha's reaching for the barf bag and just blowing out 10 bottles of vodka next to me. Willis is just, at 7'1". He's like over here on me, and I'm just like this on this flight. It was like,
you didn't tell me that one.
Yeah, get me out of this.
What was the one? I'm going to get some of this wrong. You were tasked to find a player who was running late, and you knocked on the hotel, and he opens the door, and there were multiple people in the room.
Yes, we were in Milwaukee at the Hyatt in Milwaukee, and it actually. It wasn't a player. We'll just leave it at that. I don't want to narrow it down, but it was.
I didn't know that. I thought it was a player. I assumed it was a player.
So I had to knock on the door at 4:45. We had a 5:00 bus because we had to go to another. We actually were chartering that time.
Oh.
That's what was funny. We chartered one game, I think, or two games. Knocked on the door. Door opens up, and it's the two flight attendants. And I kind of, I've been asleep for like 4 hours only, and I kind of go, look, and I go, and this person says to me, "Hey, I'm Italian." I turn around.
Were the flight attendants on your flight?
Yes, they were our flight attendants. And so
did they even look at you?
I just go, okay. we got a bus to catch. I mean, it was like.
So you worked with somebody who is one of the most colorful, charming, unique personalities in the modern era of sports. And I'm talking about former Oklahoma and Dallas Cowboys coach Barry Switzer.
Oh.
So you're tasked after graduating from Southern Nazarene University,
yep. It was
otherwise known as the Yale of Oklahoma.
I don't know about that.
Well, I'm looking at your bio here, and you wind up doing the dreaded Coaches Show. Maybe the worst shows in the history of television.
The first Coaches Show ever was Bud Wilkinson and a guy named Howard Newman, who started it with Kerr McGee of Kerr McGee Oil. They started the very first Coaches Show back in the 50s.
So they do that in the 50s. Uh-huh. Bud is replaced by, eventually, Coach Switzer. There was a guy in between, I can't remember.
Chuck Fairbanks.
Chuck Fairbanks. So now it's Barry Switzer's job. And Barry's got a personality unlike anybody else. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't know you had done Barry's show. And I know there's probably been about 3 coaches shows ever that have been watchable.
Yeah.
TCU coach Jim Wacker, when he was at Minnesota and TCU, was a personality.
Yeah.
Lee Corso, when he was the head coach at Indiana University, because he's Lee Corso. But then there's Barry. And when you did that show with Barry, how did you possibly do it beyond asking, "Hey, coach, what do you think?" And then you probably could have left the set.
Yeah, one question and leave. We did 2 shows. We did the Barry Switzer show, and then on Sunday mornings after a game, we taped the Oklahoma playback show like at 8 o'clock in the morning.
The Oklahoma playback show?
Played the whole game, and Coach Switzer and I would sit there, and he'd comment on every play. Hey, it was Oklahoma, you know? I mean, you put
So wait a minute. So if Oklahoma runs out Kansas 58-2,
yep.
You're running over the entire game?
Yep. Yes,
we are. Oh, my God.
Mac, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. After they win, Switzer didn't exactly go to bed.
Right.
So, you know, and he'd come in and he'd be, give me coffee. I need coffee. The Barry Switzer show was taped on a Thursday night, and it was kind of a living room setting, and he was enjoyable. I mean, we had guests.
He's great.
Oh, he was. Here's Barry. So my sister's getting married in Pittsburgh, and I was going to have to miss a game and the playback show. Barry calls me up and he goes, "You're not missing the game, Thulin. Blah, blah, blank, 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 blank. You're not missing the game." I said, "Coach, my wife's or my sister's wedding doesn't end until like 10 o'clock, with the reception. I can't get a TWA flight," that's how long ago it was, "until like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd never get there." He goes, "You hang on." And so I'm actually in his office. He picks up the phone. Blah, blah, blah. "So, yeah, I need your plane. Yeah, Saturday night, Pittsburgh. Okay, good. Boom." He goes, "I'm sending a plane for you Saturday night. It'll be there at 11 o'clock at Allegheny County Airport in Pittsburgh. We'll fly you back. You will do the show." And I went, "Okay." Wow. Swear to God. And I just went, "Okay."
Whose plane were you on? It had to be some wealthy oil booster.
We used to call Switzer's Air Force. Because he had planes at his disposal, and they send this plane with a flight attendant, fully stocked food, bar, the whole 9 yards for me.
You're the only passenger on the plane.
Only passenger on the plane.
By any chance, was it the same flight attendant who had been at the hotel in Milwaukee?
No, yeah, not hardly, but that's people talk about Barry's loyalty. He was very, very loyal, but the first time I'm about to do the show, and he looks at me and he goes, "Thulin, you dress like crap." I was making maybe $17,000 a year, maybe 18, and he goes, "We're going to get you dressed." So he sends me to a men's shop called Harold's in Norman, which is back then. They just debuted polo clothes, the Ralph Lauren stuff.
Yeah.
They send me in there. Some guy comes up and goes, "I'm going to dress you." And I went, "Okay."
Is this in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, it was in Norman.
Oh, great.
And they give me like $3,000 or $4,000 worth of clothes. I mean, all the latest stuff, new shoes, the whole 9 yards. So we're on a charter flight from Norman to Manhattan, Kansas for a game, and one of the flight attendants saw me, and we started talking. Long story short, she's been my wife. It'll be 42 years, and she said, "What attracted me is the way you dressed. You dress so nice."
Did you ever tell Switzer that?
No. And then when she married me, she goes, "Your clothes are crap." Because I'm blue. I'm tennis shoes. I'm shorts. I'm t-shirts. But Barry just said, "No, you're not going to get on my show dressed like that." And that's how loyal Coach Switzer was to me.
When that fell apart, by the time that was falling apart, I think you would have already been, or right around the doorstep of going to Atlanta for TBS and TNT. For those of us who recall, and this is obviously a different generation of college football and sports fans, but when you remember when Barry Switzer was also ultimately pushed out, and you probably were aware of some of the things that were going on around that program, did you see that coming? Or were you too young to know?
I'm naive. I thought he was bulletproof. I really did think he was bulletproof because he was Barry Switzer.
Yeah.
He used to call Oklahoma football the monster. And he always used to say, "Don't let the monster eat you up, Ron," because my picture was on the back of the program, and you're all of a sudden your head goes because there's 86,000 people buying programs, and you're on this show that's all over Oklahoma, and you think you're pretty big stuff. But I didn't see it happening. I didn't see a whole lot of it. The funniest line though is the NCAA was going to investigate him for buying a kid a donut, and Switzer and I are having breakfast one morning. He goes, I bought kids cars, and they're worried about me buying a donut, which I thought was the funniest line that he admitted to me. He goes, you're getting me for a donut? which I thought was a hysterical line, But I didn't see it coming because I was too naive, or maybe I didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see it because I loved Oklahoma football. I mean, that time was so much fun for me.
Can you explain to me a phenomenon? You kind of hit on it, and I've thought this. I don't think I've ever really shared it in public. Of course, Ron, there's a very good chance I could have shared it in public and no one was there to listen, read it, or watch it. But there's something that I have seen that's happened to, without naming names, is that when I see people get on television, way more than writers, or now obviously podcasting and vlogs and all the social media thread has changed it, is that the popularity and the fame and the notoriety changes that person.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Did it change you?
Yes, it when I was at TNT. I mean, I'm flying first class. You're staying in suites. Your name's being mentioned by a name you'll probably remember, Rudy Marksky, who wrote the TV column for USA Today. Yeah. Rest in peace, Rudy. Ron Thulin's the next big star, this kind of stuff. And I will never forget this. We're in our house in Marietta, Georgia, and I had a treadmill upstairs, and I'm on the treadmill. My wife comes in and just looks at me and she goes, get over yourself. She goes, that's not you. Get over yourself. Turns around and walks away. And I went, wow. Whoa. Whoa.
Well, what had you done that you felt like, that she felt like you needed to get over yourself?
I have no idea. To this day, I never did ask her. I'm afraid to. I'm scared of my wife.
Dress like crap. Well, then what? Because I can say this definitively. I've seen it happen with colleagues, people I like, and I get it. I totally get it how it could happen, and I've never been in that position ever. Never.
I'll be honest with you, man. It's scary. It scared me that I was becoming something that was getting away from my core beliefs and values, that I wasn't being that person that I was destined to be, that my mom and my father and those around me taught me to be. And to be honest with you, my college, the foundation I had in my life, because my building has crumbled a bunch of times, but my foundation never has crumbled. Cracked one or two, but never crumbled. But it scared me that I was becoming that, TV person instead of just Ron. And I didn't like that. And a friend of mine, Max Lucado, wrote a book, It's Not About You. And when I was living in San Antonio, he gave it to me. And I said, are you trying to tell me something?
To Ron.
Yeah, okay. I wrote this for you. I put you instead of Ron.
Right.
But it's true. It's not about me. And in my career now, I'll be starting my 52nd year basically coming up here.
Wow.
I know. Oh, geez. Of wearing makeup and talking to myself. That's pretty good,
Yeah.
And I'm at the point the last 10 or 15 years to be a good servant to these players and coaches. And it's not about me. And I've told the Wings players that. I've told college players that when I speak to teams. It's not about me. It's about being the person I was supposed to be. And I don't take my job. It's my job, not my life. Let's put it that way. It's not my life.
Of the broadcasters that I can think of in the television era, who were, I go back to this. Do you remember when Brent Musburger was fired by CBS?
Oh yeah.
That was a huge deal. So he gets fired, and the next night, or that couple days later, he goes on the late night show with David Letterman. And Musburger does the intro rather than whoever the normal guy was. I don't remember. And you remember the original late night show with David Letterman was really edgy and really out there and really deprecating and went places that nobody had gone before. So Musburger does the intro, and it's kind of funny because he's just been fired, and he said, live from New York, a great place to be unemployed. And he does the whole thing, and Musburger's sitting there in the chair with Letterman, and he says and Letterman's being very nice, because this guy's obviously just been fired and it's
Right.
humiliating and all this stuff. And Letterman's point was, you're great, you're this, and Musburger says, Dave, fans don't care who call the games.
I agree. The only person I cared about calling a game, when I heard John Madden on a game, I knew.
So Madden was the one for you.
Yeah, Madden was the one for me. Madden and Pat Summerall, which, Pat Summerall, Vern Lundquist,
Yep.
two of my, and Dick Enberg is my ultimate idol. But when those guys were on games, they were big games.
See, to me, it was Vin Scully and Keith Jackson.
Oh, of course, Keith in football, absolutely. And Keith and I was lucky enough to become kind of friends with him because I was doing Pac-12 for TBS actually, and we got to know each other. But I really don't think they care. I don't. The biggest compliment I get, Mac, now is, man, that was a great game. Did you see the Wings, blah, 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 or did you see, this college basketball game? Yeah, wasn't that a great game? Yeah, what'd you think of the announcers? I didn't pay attention. But they paid attention to the game. And I would rather have everybody enjoy the game than say, gee, wasn't he good?
It's one of the more mystifying developments that I see, and I understand how it happens, that you see certain broadcasters, usually color analysts, God, they make so much money, and it's like one tier makes all of it, and then the rest is everybody bunched into the same lot. And you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. My theory is that whomever is negotiating that contract, let's say it's the president of the network,
right,
with Tony Romo, Troy Aikman, whomever, doesn't see that. They don't see that you could put virtually anybody. Now, you don't want a bad broadcast.
Right.
Those are great. Those are really, really good broadcasters. But the thing was, I always hear, I'm like, wait a minute, you're so worried about dollars and cents, and you're laying everybody off, and you're giving all these guys, 7 or 8 or 10 of them, $15-20 million, even though everybody knows you could have a couple of Basset Hounds sometimes in that chair, and the ratings would be the same.
Yep, they would be. It's the game.
And that's no knock on the profession. It's absolutely no knock on the profession. It's just sometimes I see these presidents get in those situations, and I'm like, does the jock sniffing element take over in that particular case? Or is it driven by fear of, we've got to have this guy to give this broadcast, which we've paid $1 billion to have, legitimacy, that it's the best one?
I think it's a combination of both. I really do. I think Tom Brady, great example. We got to have him. We got to have him before they get him.
Why?
I know. It's because they wanted to have him before the other guys got him, and to say we got him. Well, that's not working out all that great. I think, for instance, my favorite color analyst, and I am totally biased on this, is Charles Davis. Did the NFL?
Oh, Charles is great.
Charles and I did 5 years together in college football. And
he's great.
He is the most humble, hardworking. It's all about the game kind of guy. And to this day, he and his family are still some of our best friends. And Charles is the epitome of what an analyst should be. It's not about him. It's not about having a funny line. It's about doing your job. And, of course, he has been taken off NFL. He's going to be on the SEC now, the number one analyst, taking over for Gary Danielson, which I'm happy for him, but I'm going to miss him on the NFL because I think he did a great job. But Charles goes, I'm still doing games. That's his idea.
I haven't talked to him in a while. I always kind of felt bad for him. I think he got kicked. I think he got the Mikey likes it. He'll deal because he's Charles Davis and he'll deal with
Fox
anything.
Screwed him, first of all. Fox screwed him. He won't admit that, by the way. We've talked about it. But Fox screwed him.
I don't want to get him in trouble because I have strident thoughts on. I think he's great.
I think
for all the reasons that you just said, and I'm biased because he's such a nice guy. And he's really good. And when you talk to him off camera, which you know better than I do, he knows a ton. Like he does so much homework, and I've got a couple more things. I'll let you go. What do you do? Well, you've got a life. What do you do? Because one thing that a lot of people who watch games don't know, Ron, is that sometimes you might get paired with an analyst who's really new at the job.
Oh, gosh.
Or doesn't do any homework whatsoever. They just sit in a chair and they're going to say, well, that's a good shot, that's a bad shot, and they have no clue what they're doing. How do you, I know you're too nice of a man to name names.
No, I will.
Okay.
No, I will. Yeah,
so who are the guys that you've worked with? You've raved about Hubie Brown. You've raved about Doug Collins. Mike Fratello was a phenomenal announcer. On and on. Who are the guys that you worked with, Ron? You're like, good God, what am I doing here?
You got a few minutes?
I'm sure this would be about an hour.
I'll tell you the best story. 1996, Fox comes alive. They used to be called Fox Sport because they only had one sport. It was only football. They hired me to do the Big 12. And they said, you're going to be paired with Eric Dickerson. And I said, okay, because I covered Eric when I was here in Dallas, and when he was at SMU and I was doing Southwest Conference stuff. So Eric shows up. We're at Oklahoma State and Texas Tech going to play at the old Cowboy Stadium, our first game. Bob Steinfeld, a good friend of mine who's producer of my Wings game, he and I are doing the game together. And so Eric shows up on Friday to walk through, through the stadium. And Oklahoma State's there.
Right.
And I'm standing there with all my notes and my press guide, and Eric looks at me and goes, Ronnie, where'd you get that? And he points to the press guide. I said, Eric, we sent it to your house in Sealy, Texas. Oh, man, where can I buy one? I didn't bring it. I said, no, we'll get it. Gets better, Mac. Hang on. So we get him a press guide. He spends the whole time just signing autographs. We go to talk to Bob Simmons, the coach of Oklahoma State at the time, and he doesn't ask any questions. And I'm thinking, oh, crap. Same thing with Spike at Texas Tech. So I'm going, and Bob and I look at each other. We go, oh, gosh. So we get done with the walkthroughs, and Bob goes, okay, we're going to go back to the hotel. We're going to have our production meeting. And Eric goes, I can't do that, guys. And Bob goes, why? He goes, it's Friday night. He goes, yeah, I know. Eric, we got to talk about the Open, what we're going to do. He goes, no, man, I go to gentlemen's clubs. And so Bob and I look at each other. We go, oh, crap, okay.
Wait, what town were you in?
We're in Dallas.
Okay.
We're here.
Okay.
And he shows up. He's got a sports coat on with a polo shirt, sandals, and, like golf slacks on. We're going, okay, he's Eric Dickerson. And he was the nicest guy. He was fun to be with, just fun to be with. So second or third play of the game, Byron Hanspart, boom, 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 boom. And I go, oh, what a run by Byron Hanspart. Boy, Eric, he's got quick feet. Yeah, Ron, quick feet. I go, boom. Now, this goes on for 3 games, okay?
3 games? Oh, that's right. I do remember the reviews of him were awful.
And he was so nice. And Bob and I were trying to work with him. And so we have a game at Kansas. And I'm at Kansas City Airport. Just before cell phones were big. I get a page, pick up the phone. So I go over, pick up the phone. It's the coordinating producer in Los Angeles. He goes, Ron, he goes, listen, he goes, you're not going to be working with Eric Dickerson. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, we had to let him go. And I said, how did he take it? He goes, well, we don't know. We just paged him at Intercontinental Airport. He's on his way to Kansas. And they were going to fire him while he's getting on the airplane. So I hang up the phone. I didn't even ask who I was working with. Well, all of a sudden, I hear, Thu, hey, Ron, it's Steve Davis, former Oklahoma quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
ABC. Yeah. I go, oh, Steve, how you doing, brother? Great to see you, man. I said, what are you doing here? He goes, what do you mean? I said, what are you doing here? He goes, I'm doing a game with you. And I went, what?
They hadn't even told you.
Didn't even tell me. So I get back to the hotel. I call Eric, and I said, hey, man, I'm really sorry this happened. I'm sorry it didn't work out. He goes, oh, man, don't worry about it. Only reason I did it because my grandma wanted to see me on TV. It makes for a great story. And, Bob and I still crack up about it because he knew how to do it, but he didn't know how it was done.
Yeah.
And he's one of probably 3 or 4 that I've worked with that you try to, I want him to be good. Right. I want my analysts to be the best they can be, but he and a couple of others were just pulling teeth. It's like, no, this ain't gonna work.
When you started out in the 70s, what was the smallest, rinky-dink, lowest paying job or assignment that you can remember taking?
I did the NCAA golf tournament for this new network called ESPN. This was back in 80, 81 maybe. We were in Seattle, Washington, I think it was. And I was covering Oklahoma State golf at the time. This is when they had Lindy Miller, Tom Jones. I think David Edwards was on that team. And they go, we're going to televise the final round. And I went, it's live to tape. I said, okay. And they gave me $100. But yeah, I know,
$100.
$100. And I can't remember there was an NFL announcer that a color analyst that I worked with who didn't know anything about golf, and it was a hoop. But they gave me $100, and that was pretty bad. But I had problems saying no. A lot of times, I've done games for $100, even though I was making 50 times that on other events. But I would still do it because I wanted the experience and I wanted my repetitions to get better at what I was doing.
I've told, I'm that age now where I can say young people, I always tell young people, yes is your best friend.
You got it.
Yes will create more can you, and that's a yes, and that's a yes, and that's a yes. Okay, so when you think back to your career after games,
Yeah.
I am sure at some point or another you wound up in a room, at a dinner table, someplace where you looked around the room and you see all of these people and you think, what am I doing? How did I get here? What were those for you?
Wow, there were some banquets I've done that I've emceed that I look around, like a U.S. Olympic banquet, and I see all these Olympians and all these people that I know and I grew up watching. Probably my best story is when I had an NBA game, and Hubie and I were doing it, and it was in Golden State. It was an early game. We couldn't get out the next morning, so we went out to some fancy restaurant, and it had linen tablecloths, waiters with tuxes on, the whole 9 yards. And all these people are kind of staring at us and stuff, and and I'm going, oh my God, why are they looking at me? I just want to eat. So the waiter comes over and he goes, can I take your order? And he goes, my man, you've got to give me about 10 minutes, okay? He goes, oh, okay. Waiter walks away. He goes, Thulin, third quarter, you said this about throwing it into the post. Takes out, I'm not making this up, takes out a Sharpie, draws on the linen tablecloth 2 baskets, the lanes, foul line, and everything. And he says, now, when you throw into the post, you got to have a 45-degree angle. And blah, blah, blah. He spends, I'm not making this up, 20 minutes about post play, drawing on this linen tablecloth. and
He's drawing on the linen.
On the linen to show me how to run a post play and how to repost and how you're supposed to throw it. And if they're fronting you, you got to jam the passer. But if they're playing behind you, you got to do X, Y, and Z. Waiter keeps coming over. He goes, my man, I'm busy here, all right? and I'm going, oh, wow, how'd I get into this? But, yeah, I've never taken myself that seriously. I know when people stare at me, I always walk up to them and go, hi, I'm Ron. How are you? Good to see you.
That's very nice for you.
Because I was in that position too, starstruck. Like I told you when I got Don Drysdale and Sandy Koufax's autograph, I was peeing in my pants.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Drysdale was so nice. So was Sandy, though. They were both so nice to me. And I thought, boy, if I ever get in a position like that, I'm going to be nice too.
What a great mantra. Biggest on-air screw-up.
Biggest honor is I've got an incredible wife, 2 daughters, and 2 great-grandkids.
No. Did you hear the question? Biggest on-air screw-up.
Oh, biggest on-air screw-up?
Yes.
Oh.
Unless
Okay.
Your family's the screw-up.
No, times I think I did, but I think I warped everybody here in this family. Biggest screw-up, no question about it. USC playing Stanford. USC's favored like by 42.
Is this the Jim Harbaugh game?
What's that?
Is this the Jim Harbaugh win?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're on Versus, I think it was.
Yeah.
Now, we have all these people in the truck, and the executive producer thought he knew TV. He's in my they're on this final drive, and he's in my ear. You got to say this. You got to say that. You got to say this. And I'm with Kelly Stoffer, who I just love Kelly.
Yep.
And they throw the pass into the end zone for a touchdown. I go, touchdown, Trojans. Stanford.
Oh.
And I go, oh, God. And so I get on the airplane the next day, and I'm sitting in like seat 2B, and this big, fat piece of meat sits next to me. And he looks at me and he goes, you're Ron Thulin, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. And he goes, boy, you sure screwed up that last night.
What'd you say?
I said, touchdown Trojan instead of touchdown Stanford.
No, what'd you say to the fat guy sitting next to you?
I just looked down and I went, yes, I did. And
Thanks.
And I already had not slept.
Yeah.
I mean, last night, for instance, I get home 9:45. You know, I watched the Wings game back, and I'm sitting there going, I can't believe I said that. That is the stupidest thing I've ever said. Oh, what were you thinking, Thulin?
Yeah.
And so after that screw up, I'm beating myself up. Kelly's calling me, hey man, you know, it's okay. And my wife's calling me.
Yeah.
I get friends writing me going, that was hysterical. What a screw up. And then this fat piece of garbage says that to me, and I shut my mouth and I said, Lord, thank you for keeping my mouth shut, because my brain's going, I got one-liners on you, buddy.
Yes.
You know, I'll have another chance, but you'll always be fat.
But you have an IMDb page, Internet Movie Database, Ron Thulin. Do you know what 3 credits that you have listed on the Ron Thulin IMDb page?
Do I know him?
Yeah.
Are you going to say actor?
Yeah, one of them is an actor, but you get 3 credits. They're 3 separate.
No idea.
Shows. Okay, one is 1972 World Class Wrestling Championship with the Von Erichs. Do you even remember that?
It wasn't 72. Because I was in college then.
Okay, this is what I'm just going off blame the internet.
Yeah, no, I was doing a lot of stuff with Lee Martin Productions, and we produced all the wrestling with the Von Erichs.
You did the Von Erichs?
Yeah, it was.
Did you ever do the claw on your head?
No, it was funny because Fritz was pretty funny actually. But we'd all sit in this room and they'd tell us what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And, when it was going to end, the referee would do something like tap his head like this. And both wrestlers knew we only had 30 seconds to end the match. So they knew how it was going to end, when it was going to end. That was kind of funny. Now, the actor part, I was in the worst movie ever called Tex with Matt Dillon and Emilio Estevez.
There it is.
Meg Tilly.
Yep.
And I played a newscaster. And I'm doing an NBA game. And it's Phoenix. And we're sitting there at a timeout. Barkley comes over. He goes, I watched an HBO movie today. Was that you on that movie, Tex? And I go, yeah. He goes, man, that movie sucked. And I said, yeah, it did. I'll agree with you on that.
How much did they pay you? Do you remember?
I got paid $1,500 if I didn't join the union. I wouldn't have to get residuals.
Right.
Now I wasn't making $1,500 a month. Right. So I went, okay, they flew me up to Tulsa from Oklahoma City, which is a whole 20-minute flight, and put me up in a hotel for 2 days. It took me 2 takes to do it. The first take, I started to do it, and I looked down, and there was an audio man with a microphone right in my crotch, and the microphone was right here. And I go, dead from police gun. And the director goes, cut.
Oh, that's great. I like the fact that you flew from Oklahoma City to Tulsa to start a movie called Tex that shot in Oklahoma. Do you know the last one? The last one on your IMDb page? Any idea?
No clue.
ESPN Classic Roadshow.
Oh, I love that.
What was it?
I got pictures from that.
You got pictures from everything. Yeah, true. Before we hit record on this, I was commenting on the fact there's a picture behind you of you and Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And that is like a rare, that's like a Monet. I mean, that's like, you have the Mona Lisa in your house. Nobody gets pictures with Michael Jordan.
Well, he was nice, and he actually signed it, and I had bad cowboy boots, and I looked like I'm 14 years old. But, the road show was a 2-hour live show where they brought all these guests on. I got a picture of Emmett Smith and me doing one, Joe Namath, Sal Bando. I did the All-Star game. Sal was just the greatest guy. Rest in peace, Sal. But that was a 2-hour show that you didn't know, and they had a green room. Well, most of the players were really popping it big time, before they came on. And Gaylord Perry comes out. And Gaylord, we were doing, I guess this was in Milwaukee. It was the All-Star game. And they had these wicker chairs. And somebody looks over and goes, our stage manager, Christy, she looks over and goes, he's going to bust that chair. Because he was enormous. I mean, Gaylord was enormous. So they had to go get another chair, and he had hit a bunch of pops. And I'm trying to interview these guys, and they were just, yeah, man, I remember that. But it was 2 hours live, seat of the pants, and it was a ball to do, an absolute riot to do.
Okay, last two questions. What professional achievement are you most proud of, Ron? I had to put the distinguishing professional, personal, because I know your family is a clear number one.
To be honest with you, longevity.
That's a good one. Yep.
I mean, you know, if you would
one.
have told me this little kid graduating with a degree from speech and a minor in religion, that 50 plus years later, he'd still be doing something that he dreamed about as a kid and absolutely loves, I would have said you were crazy. I remember sitting at Pirate games with my reel-to-reel tape recorder up in the stands with my dad in Old Forbes Field, doing play-by-play into this tape, and people around me thinking I was on drugs. But I always wanted to do it, and to think that I've been allowed to meet some of the greatest people in the business, in the sports world, and do something I love for this long, it's not a bigger blessing in the world, professionally.
So I think you just answered my final question. One of your former, I would say peripheral colleagues in the Turner family was longtime CNN news anchor George Bernard Shaw. Do I have that name correctly?
Yes, you do.
So near the end of his life, George Bernard Shaw had retired, obviously, from broadcasting.
Yeah.
And he was doing an interview about his career, his incredible career. And he said something that made me very, very sad. And I think about it for anybody who goes into these kinds of jobs that pulls you away from where you maybe want to be. And he said, I don't know if it was worth it. You had a job as the NBA, basketball, you bounce around and you get this giant footlocker full of memories and experiences that very few people in this world can have. You just gave me you gave me a fraction of a fraction of it, right?
Yeah.
And I could have done this for another 10 hours and not been done. Ron, was it worth it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was totally worth it. I mean, the ups and the downs, the heartache, the being gone birthdays and celebrations and stuff. And you know that. It's our job, you know. I had a family that understood that you know, that made it easy on me. I call my wife my executive producer, you know, because she keeps everything running when I'm out doing whatever I'm doing. But it was still worth it because I know that I followed the plan that I was supposed to for my life. There's not a doubt in my mind on that. There have been times I go, like when I lost my job at Turner, it had nothing to do with my performance. They got a new executive producer and they brought in Kevin Harlan. But I remember my mom had just passed away and my dad was at our house in Atlanta. USA headline, Thulin replaced by Dick Stockton. Nobody called me from Turner, at the executive producer at the time. And that was hard. That was hard. But I've always looked at it as, okay, what am I going to learn from this? Did it hurt? Absolutely it hurt. I had 2 young kids, making a bunch of money. But I after I gained my composure, I always thought of this song, I Will Rise Again. Ain't no power on earth can tie me down. And it took me a while, a couple of days, but I went, okay, what am I going to learn from this? And then more importantly, how am I going to help other young announcers that are going to go through this, that I had to go through this, the pain, the uncertainty. And I thought, I've got to use that to help these other people. And I always have. You know, when somebody loses a job, I don't ignore them. And I call them and say, hey, what can I do for you? And I'm not patting myself on the back. Please don't get that idea. But it's just that I went through that for a reason, and I've got to find out what that reason is. And a mutual friend and I, both of us, former college coach, she and I have talked about that a lot. You know, I mean, let's find the positive out of this. And I wish I've tried to, but yes, it was worth it. It's been worth it.
Well, it's not over, and you know,
no, it's not.
It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm going to embarrass you for a quick second. I watched you, when I was in college. I can remember my parents would.
Thanks. Oh,
Well,
thanks.
hang
You
on.
put the knife in my
I mean,
heart,
come
man.
on.
Yeah, and you were like 17.
Yeah,
I
I
used to
know.
watch you.
I
You're
know.
still alive.
I feel like I could do that now because that's happening to me now. I had one. I took something in to get them repaired, Ron. A pair of shoes, and it was a younger woman behind the counter. And I said, "Should I get these fixed?" And she said, "Yes, absolutely, it's worth it." And I said, "Be honest. Would you tell me if I shouldn't?" She said, "100%, absolutely. I would tell you. I wouldn't want anybody to take advantage of my dad."
Yeah.
This was not too long ago. I was playing basketball. I still play too much basketball, and I'm playing with nothing but young guys, 25 and down.
Oh gosh.
And but I love it, and I can do it kind of ish. It's debatable. And one of the guys, I don't know who he is, comes up to me, and he's trying to give me, he's being nice, and he says, "Man, I got to ask you something." He said, "You've been out here with us for the last hour and a half." I said, "Yeah," and he said, "How do you do it?" And I know what he's saying.
Well, yeah,
and he's trying to be nice.
Yeah.
But I start laughing.
That's
I said,
funny.
"What do you mean? How do I do it?"
That's funny.
Just, and I can see now he stumbled into an area he didn't mean to go. And I just sort of let it play. I sit on it. I sit on the silence just to kind of have fun with him. And he said, "Well, like your knees and your back." And I said, "You mean my age?" He said, "Well, yeah." And I'm like, "Well," and so I feel like I can say that to you now. But when I was, my parents would not let us get cable television until I graduated from college. No, because they didn't want us in front of the TV and stuff like that. So when I graduated from high school and went to college at Kansas, then I could see games. Yeah. And I watched you. And
funny.
Yeah. So, and to me, you were terrific. You were great.
You.
No, I would say that even if. I remember when I was at work at TCU, and I was talking to some people about you, and they said what a good guy you are. And this was years and years and years before obviously I met you or even went down this rabbit hole. So for you to make way too much time for me, and again, I could have.
No, man, are you kidding me?
For another 7 hours, but you're a great pro, and and a super nice man. I really appreciate you taking the time for doing this. And, I know the ending at TNT obviously wasn't the way you wanted it, but you were a founding member of something that changed sports television. And I hope you can appreciate that, even if the ending sucked. The beginning and the middle were terrific, and you were a big part of that. And you've been a great pro for a long time. And I hope you continue to work for as long as you want. And I hope you and your family and loved ones enjoy the best of health for as long as possible.
Well, you've been a friend of mine, and I appreciate it. I'm honored to be on your show because if this is the fun part of the job is when I get to share with my friends and share a couple of giggles and some laughs and some stories and some thoughts and I mean our phone call the other day was probably 45 minutes or an hour, and I think you and I could have gone another 2 hours.
Yep.
Solving the world's problems.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm humbled the fact you asked me to do this, and I appreciate it so much, my friend.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Ron. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Take care.
This is a Stolen Water Media production.